Now, see the moment she meets her new best friend.
We've got a surprise for you. Oh my
Tomorrow
God.
morning on GMA.
The brutal crackdown in Myanmar unleashing global outrage. Protesters met by live rounds and tear gas. Dozens killed, hundreds detained in reaction to the military coup. The U.S. State Department calling the scene appalling. Vaccinations across America. The U.S. now averaging 2 million doses every day. Long lines of people waiting at sites. And our government leaders needling each other over the lifting of mask mandates. At least 11 states easing restrictions against CDC recommendations. The Senate taking up President Biden's nearly $2 trillion COVID relief bill. Democrats promising a sprint to get it passed, while Republicans try stalling, forcing the more than 600-page bill to be read aloud. And tonight, how the income eligibility for those $1,400 checks has now changed. The security fortress at the Capitol bracing for a possible violent attack from a militia group. Thousands of National Guard troops standing by, the ground surrounded by fencing and razor wire. Rising tensions between the U.S. and Iran. ABC News confirming President Biden called off a second airstrike against an Iranian-backed militia in Syria last week after learning women and children were in the area. And as the Pope prepares to visit Iraq, our Ian panel is on the ground. And while we thought CO2 levels would go down due to the pandemic, we were wrong. And the levels of the harmful gas are only expected to skyrocket. But we already have the technology to fight it. So what's the holdup?
We still need to drive down the cost. There's not really a good business case.
Ginger Z shows us why it's not too late. Good evening. I'm Byron Pitts in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you for streaming with us. We begin tonight with a new milestone in the race to vaccinate America. The U.S. now averages more than 2 million doses per day. At least 54 million Americans have gotten at least one dose. Nearly 28 million Americans are fully vaccinated. And thanks to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, Yankee Stadium will now be open 24 hours a day to vaccinate New Yorkers. The city's health commissioner says America's biggest city may be able to offer vaccines to all residents by late April. But there is concern tonight about states like Texas and Mississippi, which are moving to relax mask mandates despite pleas from President Biden to keep the course. The Republican governor of West Virginia is saying today, quote, "I don't know what the rush is." Our Whit Johnson leads us off tonight from New York City.
Tonight, a pivotal milestone. The U.S. now averaging 2 million vaccine doses per day. Hundreds in long lines waiting for shots in Florida. The National Guard assisting in Kansas City.
I just want to get a vaccine and one that will work.
Starting today, Yankee Stadium will be one of the mass vaccination sites offering appointments 24 hours per day. But the overnight appointments are reserved for that new single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Alabama today easing restrictions on indoor dining, but keeping its mask mandate for another month.
The bottom line is we've kept the mask mandate in place for more than a generous period of time because it's helped.
But Mississippi and Texas dropping masks altogether. The Texas governor defending his move after the president called it Neanderthal thinking.
The mask requirement being eliminated isn't going to make that big of a change in the state of Texas. Also, people in Texas will continue to wear masks, even though there's not a state mandate.
Texas has reported more cases in the past week than any other state in the country, nearly 50,000.
Now is not the time to pull back. Over the last 7 days or so, we've reached a bit of a plateau where the deflection of the curve isn't going straight down the way it was. That's a bad sign.
Dr. Joseph Verone from Houston's United Memorial Medical Center has been on the front lines of the COVID fight for 350 straight days.
Do you think Texas is ready to remove the mask?
Absolutely not. In April, we lifted the restrictions in the state of Texas, and guess what? May, June, and July were the worst months of my life. I signed more death certificates on those 3 months than ever in my entire life.
You'll remember Dr. Verone from this touching image that went viral last year, wrapped in PPE, comforting a COVID patient. But he's now worried loosening restrictions could threaten progress.
That light at the end of the tunnel at least in Texas, just got a little farther away than what it was.
Whit Johnson joins us now from Yankee Stadium that has been turned into a 24-hour vaccination site. Whit, despite progress with vaccines, the reality is variants are still a threat. What's the latest information we have on them?
Byron, this is one of the biggest concerns among health officials right now at this pivotal moment. That highly contagious UK variant has now been confirmed in 48 states. And in Texas alone, which just lifted its mask mandate, officials there have confirmed 5 different variants, including troubling strains from the UK, Brazil, and South Africa. Byron?
Whit Johnson, thank you. Joining us now to do a deeper dive on some of the hurdles our nation continues to face in the battle against COVID is former acting director for the CDC and current president and CEO of the Robert Wood Foundation, Dr. Richard Besser. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thanks for having me on, Byron.
The mask debate has gotten a lot of attention this week, with Texas and Mississippi ending mask mandates. And then on the other end, the governor of Alabama has extended their mask mandate, particularly when it comes to a state as large as Texas. How bad can things get, despite the fact that people are slowly getting vaccinated?
Well, you know, it's been so encouraging to see the numbers going down around the country. The numbers going down in states like Texas. But, you know, fewer than 10% of the adults in Texas have been vaccinated. That means that there are a lot of people who are vulnerable, a lot of people who are susceptible to this infection. And, you know, if wearing a mask was simply a matter of a personal decision and personal acceptance of risk, I'd say, fine, get rid of the mask mandates. But when a person decides not to wear a mask, they're not just putting themselves at risk. They're putting people around them at risk. They're putting people at risk who have to go to work each day to put food on the table. And that's just not right. If we hang in there together as a nation for a few more months, we're going to see a lot of the requirements that are being put on people eased, because we're going to be able to get vaccine out to everyone who wants it.
Sure. Doc, according to the latest information from HHS, the 7-day average of cases decreased 2% last week, and it's decreased a whopping 74% since our nation's peak on January 11th. I know you hesitate to make predictions about this wild virus, but how good are you feeling right now about our nation's progress?
You know, I'm cautiously optimistic. You know, the numbers are moving in the right direction, though over the past week they've leveled off, and that gives me a lot of pause, and I think we have to be careful. We have to be careful because of the variants that have been emerging that we know spread so much easier. And while the numbers are looking good, the daily number of cases right now is still higher than what it was last summer when we started to put in all these restrictions. We're still seeing more than 2,000 people in America die each day from this. So while we're moving in the right direction, we have to stay together and follow public health guidance until we are truly done with this pandemic.
Doc, today you authored an op-ed for The Hill titled, "COVID Recovery Requires Addressing Economic Inequities." In your article, you encourage Congress to focus on 5 main things in order to give our country the chance to truly become a healthy nation again: housing, nutrition assistance, paid leave, unemployment insurance, and health care access. You've worked at the highest level of government. Inequities in this country have been a constant, particularly for communities of color. What's your biggest concern about our government not having a true moment of reckoning as we slowly start pulling out of this?
You know, what I worry about, Byron, is that we're going to see this as a short-term situation. And once we're out of this pandemic and it's really in the rearview mirror, we're going to lack the national will to make the changes in society so that everyone has the opportunity to lead healthy lives. You know, we've seen how this has played out in the pandemic, where people who have needed to go to work each day to put food on the table, to pay the rent, they've paid a major health cost, and it's not been spread evenly. Black, Latino, Native Americans, lower income communities have been hit the hardest. But if we address these 5 areas, then each day in America, even when we're past a pandemic, will be a day when everyone has the opportunity to lead their healthiest lives. And we have to come together as a nation to do that.
And Doc, we'll get you out of here in this question. The CDC was supposed to release recommendations today on interactions between vaccinated people, but that has now been delayed. What is known about what people can do once they've been vaccinated, and What do you expect the CDC recommendations to show?
Yeah, I mean, this is challenging because there's not a lot of data. We're new to this vaccine. We're new to what science shows can truly happen. But I hope at a minimum they say that a group of people where everyone has been fully vaccinated can get together indoors without masks and spend time together. I hope they say that grandparents who are fully vaccinated can hug their grandchildren. I mean, that would be a wonderful thing, and it would encourage people to get vaccinated. It's going to be a long time before everyone can get vaccinated, but those who are fully vaccinated should be allowed to do more things than they were able to do before.
Dr. Richard Besser, thank you so much for your time. I'll see you down the road.
Take care. Be well.
Now to the debate on Capitol Hill over COVID relief. The Senate taking a major step today, but one senator effectively brought the Senate floor to a halt for hours. And at the White House, President Biden acknowledging today he's comfortable lowering the dollar amount on those stimulus checks. Well, senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce reports.
Tonight, President Biden's massive $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill has finally made its way to the Senate floor. In a sign of the divisions gripping Washington, all Republicans voting against moving forward. Vice President Kamala Harris stepping in to break the tie.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50, the Senate being equally divided. The Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the motion to proceed is agreed to.
The bill includes $160 billion for testing and vaccinations, help for small businesses, and $1,400 checks to people making up to $75,000 a year. For those making up to $80,000, a slightly smaller check. It's less than what Biden wanted.
Are you comfortable with having to limit the direct payments?
Yes.
And enhanced unemployment benefits will now expire at the end of August, a month sooner than Biden had hoped.
Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House. Mary, it does not appear President Biden is going to get that bipartisan buy-in he was hoping for.
It certainly does not, Byron, especially if today is any indication that 50-50 split in the Senate is likely to stay that way. Republicans just insist that this bill is far too expensive. In fact, Republican leader Mitch McConnell called it a partisan spending spree on the part of Democrats. And now we are seeing actually Republicans intent on trying to slow this process down. Right now across town, Republicans are making the Senate clerk read aloud all 628 pages of this bill. It's a process that could last up to 10 hours. But Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says no matter how long it takes, they are going to stay in session. They're going to get this done this week.
And Mary, to that point, what's the timeline? Could the bill be passed before the end of the weekend?
That certainly is Democrats' hope, that they get this done in the next few days. And then, of course, they can get the bill quickly to the president's desk. And then once he signs this, those direct payments, those checks to most Americans, you could see those starting to go out within a matter of days.
Mary Bruce at the White House. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now to the security situation on Capitol Hill. Thankfully, today was relatively quiet in Washington, but law enforcement was on high alert. After obtaining intelligence of a possible plot to breach the Capitol today, the day far-right conspiracy theorists believe former President Donald Trump would return to power, and also during President Biden's upcoming address to the joint session of Congress. The Capitol Police Chief has asked for National Guard troops for another 2 months. Martha Raddatz is at the Capitol tonight. So, Martha, how seriously are Capitol Police taking these new threats?
Byron, they're taking the threats very seriously. They know that the Capitol building still remains an attractive target for extremists. So what the Capitol Police would like is for the National Guard, there are 5,000 here now, they'd like some portion of the National Guard to remain through mid-May, and that will likely be approved. The Secretary of Defense last month said if law enforcement needs our help, we're here to provide it. The Capitol Police also want to add about 1,000 police officers. This comes after a security review. And you know, this fence that we've been seeing here for a couple of months now, they want to take that down and replace it with mobile and retractable fencing to give sort of an open campus feel. But we're definitely not there yet, Byron, until the threat is reduced.
So, Martha, it seems like that D.C. will remain locked down in some ways, that this great American city that's been so open to the nation is still, it feels like, shut down to some degree.
It really is, Byron, and you drive around the city and you really feel, but when you come to Capitol Hill, it really is quite incredible. This goes around the entire Capitol Hill Plaza, the entire Capitol Hill grounds. You really can't get anywhere near it. And still, those National Guard, 5,000 National Guard here right now.
Wow. Martha Raddatz, thank you, my friend. When we come back, the major earthquake overseas sparking fears of tsunami tonight. Also, serial arsonist surprised tonight in a Maryland community over who stands accused of burning down homes. An unprovoked attack on a person of Asian descent, the brazen incident at a New York City subway station. Stay with us.
In recognition of all you've done, the people of the world hereby crown you Queen of Soul.
Make sure the world only sees the Aretha Franklin you want them to.
You got to disturb the peace when you can't get no peace.
This is what you were meant to do.
Genius, Aretha, premieres Sunday, March 21st at 9 on National Geographic.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
And now, a message from Jennifer Garner.
Okay, to all the parents out there, what if you had to say yes to everything, and we mean everything, your kids ask for 24 hours straight? Could you do it?
GMA wants you to take the Yes Day Challenge. Don't say this to your kids.
No.
Instead say...
Just say yes.
Post your pictures or videos to hashtag GMA Yes Day.
And you might just see it right here on GMA. Say yes to Good Morning America.
Sponsored by Netflix.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
A serial arsonist in Maryland has left multiple officials surprised, not only because of the nature of his crimes, but also because of who police say he is. ABC's Steve Osunsami brings us this report.
It's surveillance video you can see and hear. Maryland authorities tonight, they're saying that this is a former police chief from the city of Laurel and say this is the sound of him pouring fuel onto a home and then down a driveway. They say this is just one of at least a dozen fires he's accused of setting. 69-year-old David Crawford is in jail tonight, charged with multiple counts of arson and attempted murder.
While there were no reported injuries to either residents or fire department personnel as a result of these fires, the outcome could have been very different.
For close to 10 years now, fire investigators here have been trying to find the arsonist who's been burning homes and vehicles in 5 counties. In charging documents, they say Crawford had a target list and went after people he had issues with, including 2 doctors and the police chief who replaced him.
To go outside to find my house engulfed and have to come in and wake my family and get them out of the house, it knocked me to my knees.
Police believe that 3 of those fires were set at homes that belonged to the same person, his stepson. Authorities say that when the stepson would move out of a burned home and into a new one, Crawford would burn that home too. He has not yet entered a plea. Byron.
Thank you, Steve. New York City police are investigating another unprovoked attack on a person of Asian descent, this time in a subway station on Manhattan's Lower East Side on Tuesday night. In this surveillance video of the incident, now being reviewed by police, the assailant repeatedly punching the 56-year-old victim who was returning home from work. The NYPD released an image captured of the suspect, and they're investigating the incident as a possible hate crime. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live tonight for our special Stop the Hate, focusing on the growing violence against Asian Americans. It's hosted by my colleagues Juju Chang and Eva Pilgrim. Coming up here on ABC News Live. Still ahead on Prime. Security preparations are underway in Iraq for an historic visit by Pope Francis this weekend. Our Ian Panel reports on the Christian Iraqis looking for hope in his visit. And later, clean water emergency. The desperate Mississippi residents still without water demanding answers tonight. Plus, President Biden's stimulus bill includes a major commitment to black farmers. We go by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day. Major League Baseball announcing that June 2nd will forever be known as Lou Gehrig Day. The Iron Horse joining Jackie Robinson and Roberto Clemente in receiving the honor.
You're going to work for it. And that's what I'm going to do.
Every record in the book is there to be beaten.
It is a craze that has swept the nation, and this actually is a good one.
And there's a natural connection between ALS and Major League Baseball because of Lou Gehrig.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
In recognition of all you've done, the people of the world hereby crown you Queen of Soul.
Make sure the world only sees the Aretha Franklin you want it.
You got to disturb the peace when you can't get no peace.
This is what you were meant to do.
Genius, Aretha, premieres Sunday, March 21st at 9 on National Geographic.
And now, a message from Jennifer Garner.
Okay, to all the parents out there, what if you had to say yes to everything, and we mean everything your kids ask for 24 hours straight? Could you do it?
GMA wants you to take the Yes Day Challenge. Don't say this to your kids.
No.
Instead, say...
Just say yes.
Post your pictures or videos to hashtag GMA Yes Day.
And you might just see it right here on GMA. Say yes to Good Morning America.
Sponsored by Netflix.
We move up to the vehicle. He detonates the bomb.
The heroes who stopped the killer, who held the city of Austin hostage for 19 days.
It's a tripwire. All hands on deck.
The clues, the Home Depot video, that truck, and the agent who connected the dots.
It was exactly the vehicle that we were looking for.
Inside the investigation,
Vans made contact.
the takedown of the bomber. Now streaming on Hulu.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
President Biden's COVID relief bill that's now working its way through Congress includes billions of dollars in aid to black farmers and other farmers of color. We take a closer look by the numbers. $4 billion. That's what the Emergency Relief for Farmers of Color Act would provide in direct payments to help farmers of color pay USDA farm loans and taxes and help them respond to the economic impacts of the pandemic. Another $1 billion would go towards technical and legal assistance and to help root out racism in the farming industry. Let's look at some of the history. Black farmers in the U.S. have lost more than 12 million acres of farmland over the last century. And that's mostly since the 1950s, according to the USDA data. 925,000. That's the approximate number of black farm operators in 1920. roughly 1 in 6 of all farmers. But by 2017, that number plunged to about 35,000. And so now only 1.7% of farm operators are black. According to an analysis by Bloomberg News, black-owned farms on average are smaller, have less money, and receive less government support than their white-owned counterparts. The reasons for this are complicated, but experts say that a long and well-documented history of racism at the Department of Agriculture has played a role. And still to come on Prime, the doctor charged with murder for allegedly prescribing massive quantities of opioids. Also, Palace Battle Royale and open hostility, a deeper look into the allegations of bullying against Meghan Markle and what comes next. And a Bachelor apology, but some say it isn't enough. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
We will guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Big hug, Griffin.
We tell all our patients how much they're loved. We hold their hands.
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News, honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
The Senate is beginning debate on President Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package.
No matter how long it takes. A poorly targeted spending spree.
Democrats say it offers Americans direct payments and more relief in this pandemic and funding for vaccinations.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50, the Senate being equally divided. The Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the motion to proceed is agreed to.
Vice President Harris casting a tie-breaking vote today just for the Senate to begin debating this bill, which is now being read in its entirety, hundreds of pages. That's because of a stalling tactic by one Republican senator. A full reading will take up to 10 hours, we're told. It'll likely take days for an actual vote on this bill.
In New Zealand, a day of back-to-back earthquakes rattling the northeastern coast, prompting officials to issue another tsunami warning for coastal areas.
8.1 magnitude, that's the largest since 2019.
Hawaii had been on alert. That tsunami watch lifted just a short time ago.
Residents east of the country's North Island took to higher ground as a precaution following the first quake. It's been a decade since a major quake hit the city of Christchurch, killing 185 people.
This is how many in Jackson, Mississippi are getting their water. The city now on its third week under a boiled water alert, and just look at what was coming out of the pipes.
That's what we're supposed to be boiling and drinking.
Crews working around the clock to repair 100 reported water main breaks after that historic winter storm slammed the state last month.
The repairs to our infrastructure, the repairs to our aging pipes and roads are long overdue.
The city's water treatment plant forced to shut down yesterday. Water pressure too low to reach every home.
A Long Island doctor is facing murder charges in several opioid overdoses.
From his storefront that still had a Radio Shack sign, prosecutors said Dr. George Blotti ignored repeated warnings and prescribed massive quantities of opioids that killed 5 patients and endangered the lives of 6 others.
In one case, he allegedly prescribed the victim 9 times the daily maximum recommended dosage of opioids. 9 times.
Blotti is the first doctor charged in this state with depraved indifference murder for prescription abuses. Prosecutors said he'd meet addicts at a hotel parking lot or a coffee shop and write prescriptions in exchange for cash.
I am an imperfect man. I made a mistake.
Today, embattled Bachelor host Chris Harrison sitting down exclusively with Good Morning America, apologetic.
Tonight, the journey begins again.
He stepped aside from the show after backlash for defending contestant Rachel Kirkconnell. Her past social media posts show her liking a photo with a Confederate flag and attending an Old South plantation-themed party in 2018. Harrison talked about it with Rachel Lindsay, the show's first black bachelorette, on Extra.
Is it a good look in 2018 or is it not a good look in 2021?
It's not a good look ever.
I believe that mistake doesn't reflect who I am or what I stand for.
I am not the woke police.
I am saddened and shocked at how insensitive I was in that interview with Rachel Lindsay. And I didn't speak from my heart, and that is to say I stand against all forms of racism, and I am deeply sorry. I'm sorry to Rachel Lindsay, and I'm sorry to the black community.
Harrison says he's been working closely with a, quote, race educator and strategist along with faith leaders and scholars. He says he does plan to return.
Security preparations are underway in Iraq for an historic visit tomorrow when Pope Francis becomes the first pope to visit the country, where Christian roots run deep to the days of the Bible. But today, Iraq's Christian population is dwindling, persecuted in recent years by Islamist extremists who destroy their homes and their places of worship. So can the Pope's visit bring renewed hope and healing to Iraq's remaining Christian community? ABC's Ian Pannell has a report from Iraq.
In the empty storefronts of the faceless shopping mall in northern Iraq, the forlorn and the forgotten eke out an existence. It's not much, but for 6 long, painful years, Rani and his family have called this home. They're just an hour's drive, but a world away from their hometown of Bachelor, forced out one fateful day in August 2014 when ISIS came to their door.
We were just sitting, and some guys came to our house and told us to leave. We said that why? They said that don't ask why, just leave. They said that ISIS are near to you. If you don't leave, they will kill you. We went just wearing, let's say, a jacket and even without shoes.
This is a story of an entire religion that's been in Iraq since the 2nd century, targeted, persecuted, uprooted. The Christians of Iraq.
So you are homeless. Why? Because we are Christian?
The American invasion of Iraq turned sectarian tensions into open warfare. Minorities lost their protection and were increasingly targeted by a new breed of Islamist extremism. First, there was Al-Qaeda, then came ISIS, which swept across the Nineveh plains of the north, the heartland of Iraqi Christianity. Iraq is the birthplace of Abraham, or Ibrahim, the patriarch of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, home of Babylon, some claim even the Garden of Eden. The country has more biblical sites than anywhere else outside of modern-day Israel. The 3 religions, so closely linked, flourished here for hundreds of years, until the 20th century. First, it was the Jewish population, uprooted decades ago. Today, it's Christianity in Iraq that faces extinction. Only about 250,000 Christians remain in the country, down from at least 1.5 million just 20 years ago. We were in the region in 2017 as Iraqi forces fought to take back Christian towns and the city of Mosul from the black scourge of ISIS. This was a battle of the ages, and large parts of the old city were flattened by the fighting, where shell-shocked residents struggled to escape.
A dozen, 2 dozen people have just gone by, men, women. Some of them are clearly very badly injured. There's no hospital, there's no care. But just look at this to the right here, this old man just being held by his grandson.
Today, ISIS is gone, but the scars run deep. Few places more so than the city's Christian community. Tomorrow, Pope Francis will come to Iraq for the first ever papal trip. He'll see for himself what remains of Al-Tahira Church with a message of unity for all Iraqis.
It's hard to overestimate the level of bomb damage to Al-Tahira Church. The ISIS religious police use this as their base. ISIS said, "We will go to Rome, we will occupy Rome." Well, imagine the irony that instead, Pope Francis, Rome, is coming to Mosul.
Amid unprecedented security, the Holy Father will meet one of the most powerful Muslim leaders in the region and visit a Christian town at the center of this storm, Karakosh. There used to be 50,000 Christians here. Almost all fled when ISIS came. Today, barely half have come back, but the hope is that the papal visit will give a much-needed boost to this beleaguered community. Archbishop Amar will greet Pope Francis. He was the first to re-enter the Church of the Immaculate Conception after ISIS was pushed out. And this is what he filmed. And this is what it looks like today.
The Holy Father, he will be the first person who will pray after the liberation of rebuilding this church. He will come now to pray in this church with the community and to say, of course, we are here.
The Pope's coming here to address the difficulties Christians and others have faced in Iraq. There is so much physical and mental healing needed. ISIS may have been driven from Karakosh, but the pain hasn't gone. Georges is 73 years old. His sister Trazia is 86. The suffering they've endured is unimaginable. ISIS took their money, the old woman's jewelry, and all their worldly possessions. And when they had no more to give the militants, they were thrown into the river to drown. Their home is gone, their lives destroyed, and they now live in a cold, dark room for homeless families.
What has ISIS done to you, your family, and your lives?
They tortured us. They threatened to behead us and took our money, our gold. They didn't leave us anything. They threw us in the river. When I tried to save her, the water was very strong, and it took my sister. I then grabbed her shoulder and asked God to help me. Somehow I saved her and took her to the other side. We walked for 3 days without food or water.
When Pope Francis comes here, he'll make history. Many will look to him to help deliver their prayers for some glimmer of peace and hope in Iraq. But make no mistake, the challenge and the needs in this country remain immense. For ABC News, Ian Pannell in Karakosh, Iraq.
Our thanks to Ian for his reporting. Now to a different type of battle, one that's brewing at Buckingham Palace amid a revealing interview with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Our James Longman brings us the latest from London.
They were once celebrated as the future of Britain's monarchy, but tonight Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan's explosive claims have set them even further apart. In an upcoming interview with Oprah, Meghan suggesting the royal family spread lies about them.
I don't know how they could expect that after all of this time, we would still just be silent if there is an active role that the firm is playing in perpetuating falsehoods about us.
Saying she no longer fears telling her truth.
If that comes with risk of losing things, I mean, I've there's a lot that's been lost already.
The first clips come just as Buckingham Palace made an unprecedented decision to open an investigation into bullying allegations against Meghan. The Times of London saying an official complaint claimed the Duchess drove 2 personal assistants out of the household, and other unnamed staff members accused her of emotional cruelty and humiliation.
It was definitely an intensely difficult working environment. People were in tears on a regular basis.
Meghan hitting back, her office calling the report a smear campaign. Today, critics asking if the palace is going to investigate the Duchess, why wouldn't they be willing to investigate Prince Andrew, given that he faces even more serious allegations around his friendship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein?
Frankly, if they're doing inquiries about bullying at Buckingham Palace, maybe they should have done an inquiry into his behaviour and to see if there's any case to answer.
The Prince also sharing the challenges of leaving royal life to Oprah.
It's been unbelievably tough for the two of us, but at least we had each other.
And James Longman joins us now from London. James, it's been an explosive week for the British royal family in the lead up to this highly anticipated interview with Oprah on Sunday. Can you give us more insight into the conversations that the Times had with staffers alleging that Meghan was bullying them?
Well, Byron, cast your mind back to that beautiful wedding in the summer of 2018, Harry and Meghan at St George's Chapel in Windsor. The time we're talking about is just after that wedding, October 2018, when an email is sent from the communications director at Kensington Palace, where Harry and Meghan lived, to Buckingham Palace behind me, saying they need to take action to protect staff at Kensington Palace. The inference is from Meghan. Now, 2 staff, we understand, went to the communications chief with complaints that they felt that they had been bullied. And some of the quotes are pretty extraordinary. We spoke actually to the author, the journalist at the Times who wrote this story, Val Lone. He said that staff there felt humiliated. They felt that there had been emotional cruelty directed towards them. They felt they were suffering with post-traumatic stress, that they felt so tense before a meeting with Meghan that they would actually cry, and they ended up having to leave Kensington Palace, leave the employment of the royal family. And these are press reports that have been bubbling away for quite some time. We heard that Meghan apparently was difficult to deal with, waking people up at 4 o'clock in the morning, forcing them to work, over and above their normal duties. Now, of course, take all this with a pinch of salt, because principals in the royal family, we all know, are very difficult to deal with. And of course, we should say, Meghan completely, flatly denies all of these claims, and she says it's part of a campaign against her. I should say they should be concerned about an investigation like this. I was speaking to one insider today, because you start an investigation into bullying in the royal family on one principal, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, well, surely that investigation will spread, and it might be that other principals in the royal family have been guilty of bullying and other things. And I should say people do point to a double standard here. There was no investigation over Prince Andrew and his alleged interactions with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
And James, to that point, where does the family go with this? We know that there's illness that they're dealing with. This has to be just a mess inside the family.
Yeah, look, it is hard. When Harry and Meghan stepped back, a lot of us did ask, what are they going to do? Where did they fit? And they wanted to kind of formulate this new role for themselves, this hybrid of royal and celebrity, I suppose. But the royal element of their role now has entirely fallen away. It does feel that way. A lot of the military, the royal and the ceremonial military positions that Harry had, the Queen took away from him. So really, Harry specifically, I think, to most British people, feels a little bit like he's been left really without much to do. And I was speaking to someone today who said, look at that balcony behind me. I don't know if you can see it in the darkness. The royal family normally lines up there on big occasions to wave to us all. Well, they don't think we can really imagine Harry and Meghan being back up on that balcony. Although, remember Camilla? She was ostracised for years, the lady that Charles had an affair with all that time. Well, she will one day be Queen Consort, essentially. So people can come back.
Sure. Families do move on, even the royal family, I guess. James Longman reporting from London. Our thanks to you. Here at ABC News Live, we're following the creative ways communities across the country are tackling the problems they face. And tonight, we take a look at a group of Virginia faith leaders teaming up with their local health department to try to close the racial gap of who's getting vaccinated. Our Terry Moran has that story.
With hugs and COVID-friendly elbow bumps, Pastors Emmanuel Harris, Tyrone Nelson, and Mike Jones greet congregants in the crowd at the Richmond Raceway. The banter feels like post-Sunday service socializing, but this crowd isn't here to pray. They're here for protection, a dose of the coronavirus vaccine.
I always try to set that example for my daughters and my grandsons. It's important that they see me do this so that they will in turn do the same.
I want to protect myself and other people.
I had to read up on it and just to listen until I made up my mind.
Healthcare workers administered roughly 2,000 shots into arms in a single day here, and the diversity of this crowd was all part of the plan.
I asked, could you set aside 2,000 shots for black and brown people and let the faith communities be the one that get people out.
We talked to Reverend Tyrone Nelson at the historic 6th Mount Zion Baptist Church in Richmond, which has been empty for almost a year.
Second Sunday in March 2020 was the last time we were here.
And do you miss it?
Yeah. I mean, it's it has been one of the most difficult things in my life. I'm desperately in need of some hugs and some handshakes and holding some babies and seeing some of my seniors face to face.
Reverend Nelson sees vaccination as the way out, a way back home to the sanctuary. And so he has been incorporating public service messages in his virtual Sunday services.
If we're going to beat COVID-19, the vaccination is the way to do it.
But there's an issue, vaccine equity. Reverend Nelson is helping to make sure that the black community here receives a fair share of doses. It's a problem across the nation. Black Americans are receiving fewer doses of the vaccine compared to their proportion of the population. CDC data shows of those who have received at least one dose of the vaccine, 64.3% are white and 6.5% black, despite African Americans making up more than 13% of the population. That's why Reverend Nelson helped enlist roughly 50 faith leaders in and around Richmond as part of a pilot program with the Virginia Department of Health, and it all came together in the mass vaccine event at the Richmond Raceway.
I've made calls to pastors. I've made calls to my own members, all of our members here. I personally have called them myself. And I've worked the call center, getting people signed up. I wanted to be a part of every step. You know, I want people to know I'm all in.
Pastor Emmanuel Harris of the Jerusalem Baptist Church said faith leaders have borne painful personal witness to the terrible toll the virus has had on the black American community.
We've been doing graveside funerals since March of 2020. And so we see firsthand how COVID is devastating the African-American community. And so that's why a lot of pastors just feel passionate, committed, that we have to do something to stop this.
In fact, in Virginia, though they have represented 22% of COVID cases and 24% of COVID deaths, black residents account for just 12% of vaccine recipients so far. Black Virginians make up 19% of the population in the state. The Virginia Department of Health is hoping to turn those numbers around.
We use the CDC's Social Vulnerability Index. And that is a tool that the CDC has published for the whole country to really help understand where we should focus resources and times during an emergency.
Digging into specific census districts.
So faith-based organizations in our highest risk areas were asked to be a part of this pilot.
It's a data-driven approach, a public health campaign delivered by faithful messengers.
We know that as pastors, as local leaders, that we have the trust of the people that we've served for decades. A lot of our seniors aren't online. They don't have emails, a lot of them don't. And so how are they getting registered?
Dr. Mike Jones is pastor of Village of Faith Ministries and a city councilman in Richmond. He knows that the vaccination challenge here goes beyond equities and logistics. They've also had to deal with the skeptics.
And there has been talk about vaccine hesitancy in the black community. Is that something you've had to address?
Well, I mean, it's something that we've discussed all throughout history, that when we talk about the social inequities that have been placed upon the African-American community, we know about Tuskegee, but now how do we survive this pandemic? That's been our focus. We've gotten educated about this process from March until now, and that's where we are with our people. We're encouraging them one thing: believe God, trust the science.
Our thanks to Terry. Still ahead on Prime tonight, Some say it could be the silver bullet to help solve climate change, and the technology already exists. So what's the holdup? Our Ginger Z breaks it all down.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
In recognition of all you've done, the people of the world hereby crown you Queen of Soul.
Make sure the world only sees the Aretha Franklin you want them to.
You got to disturb the peace when you can't get no peace.
This is what you were meant to do.
Genius, Aretha, premieres Sunday, March 21st at 9 on National Geographic.
It's happening right now across America. Fear, anxiety, hate, attacks of brutal violence against Asian Americans, rising in the shadows of a pandemic. What's really being done to stop it? Is it enough? It's a crisis that's been underreported until now.
Stop the hate, the rise in violence against Asian Americans. The powerful new ABC News Live event special, streaming everywhere tonight.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion. The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
And now, a message from Jennifer Garner.
Okay, to all the parents out there, what if you had to say yes to everything, and we mean everything, your kids ask for 24 hours straight? Could you do it?
GMA wants you to take the Yes Day Challenge. Don't say this to your kids.
No.
Instead, say...
Just say yes.
Post your pictures or videos to #GMA Yes Day.
And you might just see it right here on GMA. Say yes to Good Morning America.
Sponsored by Netflix. She's one brave little girl battling a rare disease.
1 in a million.
Now,
We've got a surprise for you.
see the moment she meets her new best friend.
Are you ready for this?
Get ready to feel good.
Oh my God.
Tomorrow morning on ABC's Good Morning America.
Okay, it's our coming footage. Not being there, it is our coming footage.
Okay.
Oh!
The third time was apparently not the charm for SpaceX. It seemed like everything was going perfectly for SpaceX Starship rocket. Well, until it wasn't. As you just saw, the unmanned craft exploded on the landing pad a few minutes after touching down in Texas late yesterday. SpaceX one day hopes this craft will be used to send humans to Mars. That may be some time away, though, as this was the third unsuccessful landing attempt for the Starship rocket. What if technology existed to literally slow down climate change, creating a bridge of sorts to a more sustainable future? In this week's It's Not Too Late, our Ginger Z explains the solution is out there and has actually been for years. But it's next step that's tricky: buy-in.
Hi, I'm Ginger Z, and it's not too late. Almost every week, I have stood right here and I have shown you graphs like this. That is carbon dioxide rising at a rate never seen in history. And pair it with what it does to our climate, it makes it warmer. We show you all the time that jump in CO2 emissions is definitely from us, mostly these. But you remember a year ago when we heard a bunch of really beautiful stories about animals going back to their habitats, CO2 levels dropping dramatically without everybody's regular commute and all the jets in the sky?
Yesterday I was telling you about how great the air quality is here due to the fact that there's no traffic. And if you look real close, look at all the fish that have come back. Nature's a funny way of taking back control.
To the global pandemic, they said. Well, the silver lining just got a little bit tarnished because our emissions are back up. We ended 2020 with 2% more emissions than we had in 2019. And it doesn't look like we're going to slow down anytime soon. So, since we haven't figured out the whole renewables switch yet, and that's going to take time, we are going to keep burning fossil fuels. So wouldn't it be great if we could just grab all that CO2 before it goes into the atmosphere and heats us up? It's an idea that isn't new, but that doesn't mean it can't be a big help right now, like yesterday. It's called carbon capture. It's just what it sounds like. So let me show you exactly how this works. You take a natural gas plant, for example, a smokestack that's pouring tons of carbon dioxide into the air every day. Now, there are different ways that you can do this, but basically you put something in that smokestack that attracts carbon dioxide only. It grabs it all. Then you can heat up that substance and take away the carbon dioxide, put it deep in the ground, or make it into something. And then you can reuse the CO2 magnet to get more CO2. It already has decades of success in labs and even at power plants like this one in Illinois, where they've been sequestering carbon dioxide and then injecting it into the salt aquifer below them for more than 4 years. And there's also this one in Texas, where they have the capacity to take more than 7 million tons of carbon out of the atmosphere each year. So wait a minute. Is this our silver bullet that's going to save us from ourselves? And if so, why have we not done it everywhere yet?
We still need to drive down the costs.
It's an economic situation.
There's not really a good business case.
Oh, it's about money. Okay. Well, carbon dioxide is not in itself all that profitable, so that's a problem. And there are questions about what we can make from it.
So if you think about current uses of carbon dioxide, there are things like in a greenhouse, higher concentration of CO2 helps the plants grow. Beverage production, cement and concrete manufacture. One of the highest prices you can get for selling CO2 currently is actually enhanced oil recovery.
And here's the kicker, it still costs a lot to capture carbon.
We're at about a point where it costs $40 to $45 per ton of CO2 to capture.
But there is a relatively new tax credit that might help motivate companies.
I've been hearing about it for a long time. It's just not happening yet.
That's right, yeah.
So why?
We are in the early stages of implementation of a tax credit called 45Q that was extended by Congress. That particular tax credit has caused a lot of industry interest. And so, yeah, we at NATL have been working on carbon capture for 25 years. Once the market's ready, that technology is ready to move in.
The bottom line, though, is carbon capture is still expensive, and somebody is going to need to make it worth the while of big business to get involved. Whether it's the government and the research being done at the National Energy Technology Laboratory, or maybe billionaires? Thank goodness Elon Musk dropped this little ditty on Twitter. Am donating $100 million toward a prize for best carbon capture technology. Details later. He says am going like I say am going to Starbucks, but Elon knows we have to do whatever it takes because time's not on our side. And then there's somebody who also knows a little bit about making history and says humanity is ready.
We need more than just philanthropy and altruistic people and companies. We need everyone to do it. In order to do that, we need to reduce the cost and make sure that it can be done at very large scale.
Anusha Ansari is the first Muslim woman to go to space and the first Iranian. Now she is the CEO of X Prize, and she's trying to convince the best and the brightest in the world to focus on carbon capture.
You know, you want to just throw up your hands and say, we're not going to be able to survive this. But the truth of the matter is it's not too late. We are getting to the timeline that, you know, we can't, there will be a point of no return, but we're still not there. And fundamentally at X Prize, we believe in, you know, innovation from around the globe. So with competition, we reach out to every corner of the world and invite the innovators to just come and put their ideas on the table, and we help them shape it.
You heard her. She said it. We can do this. We have to do this. And it's not too late.
Our thanks to Ginger. And while we're mindful of the impact our waste has on the planet, our image of the day, children playing near a garbage dump in Venezuela, where many families recycle the waste as a source of income. Children are always able to bring beauty and joy to every corner of our planet.